it's so easy for our minds to overestimate or underestimate anything that we're gonna do or buy. They're selling the emotions of status, and they never talk about the maintenance is gonna cost you an absolute fortune. And then it's like, you knew all along that really and truthfully, if you thought about it carefully, it wasn't something that you really wanted. You can sometimes overestimate what they can bring to the party or underestimate what they bring to the party and not utilize their talents fully. Successful strategy is to allocate a set amount of time each day for a task without judging its difficulty or the duration. Welcome to the podcast, and this is one of my solo efforts, which is something I'm going to do every third week. Today I'm going to talk about how we as people overestimate or underestimate so many aspects of our lives, and this leads to various problems. For instance, underestimating the time needed for a task can lead to a realization that it will take much longer, causing us to catastrophize, freeze, and often result in not finishing the task because it just seems so big. Conversely, when we overestimate the difficulty of a task, it can lead to procrastination, as we believe it will be too challenging and that it'll just be way too difficult. And IKEA furniture is one of those. If you underestimate it, then you're in for a rude surprise. And then sometimes you can just, let things sit in the garage because you overestimate the time that it's going to take and you just don't want to deal with it. So it's an interesting thing. And, when you go to buy something, advertisers always overestimate the benefits. Take, for instance, a sports car. They're selling the emotions of status and the feelings of speed and how it's going to make you more attractive and, the significance it's going to give you. And they never talk about, if you go away, that there's just no boot to speak of, and it's very, very difficult to travel anywhere if you've got to take much with you. The fact that the maintenance is going to cost you an absolute fortune, insurance is going to cost you a fortune, gas may cost you a fortune depending on whether it's electric or gas sports car or petrol or diesel. Usually not diesel. But remember, advertisers are selling you and totally overestimating the benefits of what any product's going to give you. Even something like washing powder, they're going to really push the benefits of easy stain removal and all that. And the reality is there's probably very little difference between the powders, but it's which washing powder tugs on the emotions the most. So when you're going to buy something, try and evaluate the facts and remember what emotions they're selling you, and make sure that you try not to fall for emotions if it's something that you really don't need. And it's something that is going to be very temporary. You might use it once and then it's like, you knew all along that really and truthfully, if you thought about it carefully, it wasn't something that you really wanted. Getting back to like tasks or competition, so often, athletes and teams will overestimate the opposition, and that doesn't help them very much at all in competing, because they go in feeling like the underdogs and thinking about all the strengths that the opponents have rather than their own strengths. The other side of underestimating opponents can lead to complacency, and I think it's really poor to underestimate opponents, because you're kind of saying to yourself, I don't have to work that hard today because they're not that good, and that can get you in trouble and bite you in the ass. I think overall what I'm saying is that it's so easy for our minds to overestimate or underestimate anything that we're going to do or buy. And perhaps a different strategy is to, and I'm sure this is pretty much the only successful strategy, is to allocate a set amount of time each day for a task without judging its difficulty or the duration. This routine-based approach often makes tasks easier to manage. If you, for instance, need to write an essay, so I'm going to do an hour, every morning between 8 and 9, it doesn't matter the time, and go as far as you can that hour every day until the task is completed. That way there's no energy being spent on evaluating how long or how not long it's going to take you. Overall, sticking to routines and pragmatic planning will stop some of the effects of overestimation and underestimation. There was one other thing I wanted to say about that. When you want to buy something and you feel that real urge to buy it, perhaps just say, when I really feel the urge to buy something that I'm not really sure about it, my emotions are really charged, which is why when people sell, they try to put an urgency there for you to make the decision while you're emotional. Just say, whenever I feel that way, I'm going to wait 24, 48 hours before I decide. I'm going to sleep on it. And that way, those impulse buys where they've sold you the emotion and you've imagined all the overestimated benefits that they've planted in your mind, you can take a step back and then start to really evaluate if it's something that you really want to buy. Anyway, the overall message is, the less you overestimate and underestimate, the better. And if you're running a business, we've all had this, or hire a VA, you can sometimes overestimate what they can bring to the party, and that leaves you disappointed, or underestimate what they bring to the party and not utilize their talents fully. So you can see in all areas of our life how overestimating and underestimating can give us problems of procrastination and maybe poor decision making. And we're all human, but again, my 80-20 rule, if 80% of the time you can take a time out before you buy something, or put something in place where it doesn't matter whether you overestimate or underestimate it, you're just going to do the job until it's completed. Anyway, hopefully that helps, and speak to you again soon. Remember, next week I have a fantastic guest. She was a CNN anchor. She's an accomplished speaker, an accomplished broadcaster, commentator, just an all-round amazing woman, Candy Reed. So please tune in next week for my interview with Candy Reed.